I confronted my best friend. 10 years after he sabotaged me while I was already drowning. I thought he'd apologize, but he said something 10 times worse. One day out of the blue, my wife told me she had no feelings for me and handed me divorce papers. I thought she was kidding, but she sincerely meant that she wanted nothing to do with me and was tired of us. Even though I bought her a new car the week before, it didn't matter. Leaving her wasn't the hardest part. It was losing custody of my 6-year-old daughter. I could have maintained our relationship, but what my best friend told the courts made sure I'd never see her again. I still remember that day in court so vividly. My best friend, the guy I'd known since high school, took the stand out of nowhere. I remember feeling relieved at first because surely he would back me up. But instead, he looked me dead in the eyes and started crying, corroborating my wife's story and telling everyone how he watched me violently shake my daughter during one of my rage episodes. My jaw dropped. I looked at him like it was a bad dream. He started showing doctored texts and video clips of me and my daughter, our happy moments twisted into painting me out as an abusive monster. I looked over at my wife, who was putting on crocodile tears as if every word he was saying was true. The judge stared at me with disgust. My lawyer wasn't ready for it. Even he looked at me like I was a liar when I told him this was fake. That day, I lost everything. No visitation, no phone calls, nothing. When I stepped outside the courtroom, I could barely breathe. I gathered my things and went home, proceeding to drown my sorrows in alcohol. Once hammered, I called my best friend, slurring my speech and demanding to know why he'd destroyed my life. But all I got back was laughter, cold and smug. He told me flat out, "I've wanted your wife to be mine for so long. You know how sick I can get when I'm in love." Then my ex-wife took the phone, her voice dripping with cruelty. "He'll be a better father to her than you ever were. You'll never see your daughter again." I started crying over the phone, begging them to tell me they were joking. Instead, my ex poured salt into my wound. She told me that they have been sleeping together behind my back for 2 years, planning exactly how to take my daughter from me. The whole thing was an orchestrated lie to ruin my life. I was devastated. I should have confronted them, but I didn't. I moved states, started over, but I never gave up hope. I kept sending birthday cards, letters, and gifts to my daughter, hoping she'd know her dad loves her, but I never heard a word. All I knew for certain was that my ex was lying to her about how I used to do things to her when she was little. My ex told me so herself. I was almost ready to face the fact she'd never really know me. But then, out of nowhere, 10 years later, a call came that shattered everything. A hospital from my old hometown said my daughter had been in a car accident. They told me my name was listed as her emergency contact. My heart nearly exploded. Why was I her emergency contact? But I didn't ask. I just jumped into my car, hands trembling the whole drive. When I walked into that hospital waiting room, my ex-wife and former best friend sat stunned, clearly never expecting to see me again. The air was thick with awkwardness. My ex-wife quietly got up and moved toward the doctors, presumably to warn them, leaving me and him alone. I didn't say a word, and that's when he started speaking. At first, he seemed emotional, almost like he might apologize. But instead, the things he said made my blood boil. He admitted to me with a cruel tone that he never gave my daughter any of my letters or gifts I sent. He laughed about how he convinced her I'd abandoned her. But then, just as I thought it couldn't get worse, he changed gears. A fake sorrow began dripping from his every word, trying to make himself sound like the victim. "I'll admit it," he said, putting on this righteous act. "I neglected her. Kids are a lot of work, man. You know how it is. I'm not proud of this, but there were times she needed a good wallop. Honestly, I'm doing you a favor letting you back in her life now. She's a mess. You should thank me." I felt myself about to explode. Every part of me wanted to swing at him right there. But before I could respond, a small, weak voice called out from behind the slightly open curtain nearby. My daughter, awake, staring at us both, her eyes filled with pain and confusion. I ran over, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. I froze completely. My daughter's eyes locked onto mine, and the machines around her bed started beeping frantically. Her heart rate spiked on the monitor, climbing dangerously high as shock registered across her pale face. A nurse rushed in immediately, pushing past me and forcing everyone back from the bed. "Dad?" The word came out as barely a whisper through her oxygen mask. My heart shattered hearing her voice after 10 years. My ex-wife immediately stepped forward, her voice sharp with false concern. "Sweetheart, you're confused from the medication. This man isn't—" My former best friend pulled out his phone, texting rapidly. I caught a glimpse of the screen before he angled it away. The word lawyer was clearly visible in his message app. I reached toward my daughter's hand, desperate to comfort her, to let her know I was really here. But my ex-wife physically blocked me, her body creating a wall between us. "You have no legal right to be here," she announced loudly, making sure everyone in earshot could hear. "Security!" 2 uniformed guards appeared in the doorway within seconds. My stomach dropped as I realized my friend hadn't been texting a lawyer at all. He'd been alerting hospital security about a dangerous individual in the pediatric ward. The attending doctor looked between us, confusion evident on her face. "I need to know who has legal custody here. The patient's stability is my primary concern." My daughter tried to speak again, her hand weakly reaching toward me, but the oxygen mask muffled her words. The heart monitor's beeping grew more urgent, the numbers climbing higher. I made a split-second decision. Fighting this battle here would only traumatize her more. I took a step back toward the door, hands raised in surrender. The monitor showed her heart rate hitting dangerous levels, the red numbers flashing warnings. My ex-wife immediately filled the space I'd vacated, leaning over our daughter and whispering urgently in her ear. My friend positioned himself strategically, his broad frame blocking my view of the room entirely. The security guards escorted me into the hallway, their grips firm on my arms. Reality crashed over me like ice water. I had no legal standing here, no custody rights, no visitation, nothing. My phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. When I finally checked it, there were 47 missed calls from an unknown number. My hands shook as I played the first voicemail, a young girl's voice crying and desperate. "Mr. Thompson, this is Sarah, your daughter's friend. She made me promise to call you if anything ever happened to her. She's been in an accident and she needs you. Please, please call me back." The timestamp showed she'd been trying to reach me for hours. My daughter had given her friend my number. The emergency contact listing at the hospital wasn't a mistake or oversight. She'd wanted me here. The door to her room opened and my ex-wife emerged, her face a mask of cold fury. "She's too fragile for this kind of disruption," she said, loud enough for the nurses to hear. Then she reached into her purse purse and pulled out a document. This restraining order is still active. You're in violation just by being here. I stared at the paper. A decade-old restraining order, carefully maintained and renewed. She'd been prepared for this possibility all along. I need to see her, I said, my voice breaking. She listed me as her emergency contact. She wants me here. What she wants and what's legal are two different things, my ex-wife replied. My lawyer will be here within the hour. Yours? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old contacts. My former lawyer's number went straight to a disconnected message. Of course, it had been 10 years. When I finally reached his office, his secretary informed me he'd retired 3 years ago. The attorney covering his cases couldn't see me until Monday. It was Friday night. Visiting hours would end in 2 hours. Please, I begged my ex-wife, just 5 minutes. Let me tell her I'm here, that I never stopped loving her. She smiled, the same cruel smile from that phone call 10 years ago. She knows exactly what kind of man you are. I've made sure of that. My friend emerged from the room, closing the door firmly behind him. He looked agitated, running his hand through his hair repeatedly. A nurse walking by mentioned quietly to her colleague that he'd seemed upset after whatever the patient had said to him. I spent the next hour in the waiting room, making desperate phone calls to any lawyer who might take an emergency case. None would touch it without a retainer I couldn't afford. Out of desperation, I searched for my daughter's name on social media. Her profile was public, probably forgotten in the chaos of the accident. I scrolled through years of posts, each one a knife to my heart. Another Father's Day without my deadbeat dad. Watching my friends with their fathers at graduation. Must be nice to have one who cared enough to stick around. 10 years since my father abandoned me. Good riddance. But the recent posts were different. 3 months ago, had a weird dream about my dad trying to call me. Why can't I remember what he looked like? 2 months ago, found an old photo album. Why don't I have any pictures with my father? Mom says he never cared enough to take any. 1 month ago, sometimes I wonder what his side of the story would be. But abandoned kids don't get to hear excuses. My hands trembled as I scrolled further. 2 weeks ago, a post that made my blood run cold. Mom found out I've been asking questions about dad. She's really upset. Maybe I should just let it go. Security footage on the waiting room TV showed my friend's car speeding out of the hospital parking garage. Whatever my daughter had said to him had clearly shaken him. A young woman approached me hesitantly. Mr. Thompson? I looked up to see a teenage girl with worried eyes. I'm Sarah. I've been trying to call you. She sat down beside me, glancing around nervously. I've known Emma since middle school. She talks about you sometimes when her mom and him aren't around. She talks about me? Sarah nodded. She has dreams about you. She says she remembers someone singing to her when she was little, but her mom tells her it was just her imagination. I started wondering why she had no photos, no letters, nothing from you. It didn't make sense if you were really as horrible as they said. I sent letters every week for years, I said, my voice hollow. Birthday cards, Christmas presents, everything. I know, Sarah said quietly. Emma told me she asked about them once. Her mom said you never cared enough to send anything. But last month, Emma found a box in the attic. It had her name on it, locked up tight. She couldn't open it, but she said it rattled like it was full of cards. My ex-wife appeared in the doorway, her eyes narrowing when she saw Sarah beside me. Sarah, your parents are looking for you. You should go. Sarah stood quickly but squeezed my hand. Emma saved your number in her phone 2 months ago. She labeled it Dad. She was working up the courage to call. After Sarah left, my ex-wife approached with a manila folder. Since you seem so interested in Emma's welfare, she said, dropping it in my lap. Here are her medical bills from the accident. $73,000 and counting. Still want to play daddy? I opened the folder, seeing the astronomical numbers. Then I noticed something else. Printed screenshots of every attempt I'd made to contact my daughter over the years. Every birthday card I'd sent, photographed and labeled as harassment. Every gift, documented as unwanted contact. All dated after the restraining order. You documented everything, I said slowly. You kept evidence of me trying to contact her just in case. I protected my daughter from a dangerous man, she replied. The courts agreed then, and they'll agree now. My phone rang. My boss's name appeared on the screen. When I answered, his voice was strained. Tom, I just got a call from someone claiming you're violating a custody order and harassing a minor. They said you're a child abuser. I have to suspend you pending an investigation. I'm sorry. The walls were closing in. In just a few hours, I'd lost my job and any chance of seeing my daughter. My credit cards would be maxed after the hotel tonight. I had $247 in cash and a quarter tank of gas. Sarah appeared again, this time at the emergency exit. She waved me over urgently. Emma's awake. She just texted me. She showed me her phone. They won't let me see him. Mom says he'll go to jail if he comes back, but I need to know why he's here. I need to know if he really left me. I stared at the message. My daughter had saved me as dad in her friend's phone too. She'd been thinking about me, questioning the narrative she'd been fed. Tell her I never left her, I said urgently. Tell her I've been trying to reach her for 10 years. Sarah typed quickly, then showed me Emma's response. I knew it. I've been having dreams that felt like memories, but if I say anything, Mom will send me to live with my grandparents out of state. She already threatened it when I found that box. Desperation drove me to a terrible decision. I got in my car and parked across from the hospital, just close enough to see her window. I needed to be near her, even if I couldn't be with her. I didn't realize I was violating the restraining order's distance requirement until the police cars surrounded me 20 minutes later. As they put me in handcuffs, I looked up at her window. A pale face appeared briefly behind the glass. My daughter watched them arrest me. Again, whatever progress I might have made, whatever doubts she'd been having about her mother's story, evaporated as she watched her father being taken away in a police car. The local news picked up the story within hours. Estranged father violates restraining order at injured daughter's bedside. They used my mugshot from the arrest. The article got Emma's age wrong, said she was 15 instead of 16, but the damage was done. While I sat in the holding cell, my friend posted on social media a photo of him at a lawyer's office with the caption, taking necessary steps to protect my family from dangerous individuals who refuse to respect boundaries. My sister was my last call. When she answered, her voice was tired. Tom, I saw the news. It's not what it looks like, I started, but she cut me off. It's never what it looks like with you, is it? First the divorce, now this. My husband says if I get involved in your drama again, he's filing for divorce. I have my own kids to think about. She's my daughter, I said desperately. She wanted me there. Then why were you arrested? Why is there a restraining order? Tom, maybe they were right about you. Maybe you need help. The line went dead. My own sister, the last family I had was gone. I used my last cash to pay for a cheap motel after they released me the next morning. The place smelled like mold and desperation. I called the only lawyer who'd return my messages, a discount attorney who worked out of a strip mall. Best case scenario, he said after reviewing my case. If you follow every rule perfectly, never violate the order again, complete anger management classes, and jump through every legal hoop, you might get supervised visitation in 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months? I repeated numbly. That's if your ex-wife doesn't fight it, which she will. Realistically, you're looking at a year minimum and thousands in legal fees, and that's just to see her for an hour a week with a court supervisor watching. I hung up and lay on the moldy motel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. 10 years of hope, destroyed in a single night. My daughter had reached out, had listed me as her emergency contact, had saved my number in her phone. She'd been questioning the lies she'd been told, and I'd ruined it all by showing up. The morning after my release, I woke to find my friend standing outside my motel room door. Through the peephole, I watched him shift his weight nervously, checking his watch. My instinct was to hide, but curiosity won. I opened the door a crack. He pushed past me into the room, his eyes darting around the dingy space. "We need to talk," he said, pulling out his phone and showing me Emma's physical therapy schedule. "She's asking questions." Too many questions. I grabbed the phone from his hands, memorizing the appointment times before he snatched it back. "What kind of questions?" "About you. About that night in court. About the bruises she had when she was younger." His face twisted with something between guilt and anger. "I'm trying to protect this family, Tom. Our family." The way he said "our" made my skin crawl. I watched him pace the small room, noticing how his hands trembled slightly. "You mean the bruises you gave her?" His fist connected with the wall beside my head before I could react. "Those were discipline, something you never understood. Kids need structure, boundaries, not some absent father sending meaningless cards." I stayed perfectly still, watching plaster dust settle on his shoulder. "I wasn't absent by choice. Weren't you?" He laughed bitterly. "You could have fought harder, could have stayed in town, kept trying, but you ran, made it easy for us." The truth in his words stung more than I wanted to admit. I had run, not from guilt, but from the pain of being painted as a monster. Now I wondered if staying would have made any difference. After he left, I found myself at the public library, using their computers to dig deeper into Emma's life. Her art teacher, Mrs. Chen, had a public Instagram account filled with student work. I scrolled through months of posts until I found Emma's paintings. The early ones showed typical teenage subjects, flowers, landscapes, abstract designs, but the recent ones made my breath catch. Shadowy figures reaching through doorways, a girl standing between two faceless men, a box wrapped in chains with light seeping through the cracks. Mrs. Chen had commented on the last one. "Beautiful metaphor work, Emma. Your exploration of hidden truths is really developing." I screenshot everything, knowing I couldn't use it legally, but needing to document what I was seeing. My daughter was painting her confusion, her search for truth, right there for anyone who cared to look. The library closed at 8, forcing me back onto the streets. I drove aimlessly, eventually finding myself parked outside Emma's school. The building was dark except for security lights. I sat there remembering the milestone moments I'd missed. First days of school, science fairs, concerts, graduations. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo of Emma in her hospital bed, my friend's arm draped possessively over her shoulders. The message read, "She doesn't need you confusing her recovery. Stay away, or I'll make sure she knows exactly what kind of man you really are." I stared at the photo, studying my daughter's face. Even through the medical equipment, I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She wasn't looking at the camera, but somewhere beyond it, lost in thought. The next morning brought another crisis. The motel manager knocked on my door, informing me my credit card had been declined. My ex-wife's lawyer had apparently filed some kind of financial hold related to the custody violation. I had 2 hours to vacate. I packed my few belongings into my car, now my only shelter. The gym membership I'd maintained for years became my lifeline, a place to shower, to maintain some dignity. I changed clothes in the locker room, trying to look presentable enough to not draw attention. Sarah found me at a coffee shop that afternoon. She slid into the booth across from me, keeping her voice low. "Emma's being discharged tomorrow. They're moving the custody hearing up because her mom wants to take her out of state immediately." Out of state? My coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down too hard. Her mom got a job offer. Very sudden, very convenient. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing me a screenshot. "Emma posted this last night before her mom made her delete it." The post was simple. "Sometimes the people who say they're protecting you are the ones you need protection from." She knows something's wrong, I said, hope and fear warring in my chest. Sarah nodded. "She asked me to look into something about her stepdad's first wife, the one who died." My blood chilled. "What did you find?" "Not much. It happened in another state. She fell down the stairs while he was at work." "Except," Sarah glanced around nervously, "I found an old newspaper article. A neighbor reported hearing arguing that morning. The case was closed when he had an alibi from his boss." "His boss, who was also his best friend," I guessed. "Exactly." Sarah gathered her things. "I have to go. Emma's mom is getting suspicious of everyone now." "But Tom?" She paused at the edge of the booth. "Emma remembers more than they think. She's just been too scared to say anything." That evening, I made a decision that would haunt me. I created a fake social media profile and found my way into a support group for parents who'd lost custody. Not to spy, but to find others who might understand. What I found instead was my ex-wife's posts from years ago. She'd been in the group under a pseudonym, asking for advice on protecting her daughter from a dangerous ex. The responses were supportive, offering strategies for maintaining restraining orders, documenting harassment, building cases for sole custody. She'd learned from the best how to keep me away. But buried in the comments was something interesting. Another user had warned her, "Be careful your new partner doesn't have their own agenda. Sometimes they want the ex gone for their own reasons." My ex-wife's response was telling, "He loves my daughter like his own. He'd never hurt her." The same user replied, "That's what I thought too, until the bruises started showing up and he convinced me they were from her being clumsy." The thread ended there. My ex-wife had left the group shortly after. I spent the night in my car in a 24-hour parking garage, trying to sleep, but mostly planning. The custody hearing was in 18 hours. I had no lawyer, no money, no home, but I had something else, the beginning of a pattern. Morning came too soon. I cleaned up as best I could at the gym, put on my only suit, and drove to the courthouse. The parking lot was full of news vans, a Apparently, my arrest had made me interesting enough for local media to cover the custody hearing. Inside, I saw them immediately. My ex-wife in a conservative dress, playing the concerned mother perfectly. My friend in an expensive suit, his hand proprietarily on her back. And between them, in a wheelchair with her arm in a cast, Emma. She looked so much older than the 6-year-old I'd lost. Her hair was darker, like mine. Her eyes, when they briefly met mine across the lobby, held a depth of pain that no 16-year-old should know. My ex-wife noticed the eye contact and immediately wheeled Emma away, but not before I saw my daughter mouth a single word: Dad. The courtroom was smaller than I remembered. The same judge who'd ruled against me 10 years ago sat at the bench, older now, but with the same stern expression. I sat alone at my table while my ex-wife's side had 2 lawyers. Your Honor, one of them began, we're requesting an immediate modification to the existing custody arrangement and permission for relocation. The respondent's recent behavior demonstrates an escalating pattern of harassment that puts the minor child at risk. They presented their evidence methodically. The arrest at the hospital, the social media, stalking, the years of unwanted contact despite the restraining order, photos of me sitting outside the hospital, security footage of me at Emma's school. I watched it all unfold, seeing how every desperate attempt to connect with my daughter had been twisted into evidence of obsession. They were building a narrative where love looked like danger, where persistence looked like stalking. Then came the witnesses. A social worker testified about Emma's trauma response to seeing me. The hospital security guard described my aggressive behavior. Even the motel manager was there, painting me as unstable and potentially homeless. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. Your Honor, I don't have a lawyer. I don't have much of anything anymore, but I need you to know that everything I've done has been out of love for my daughter. The judge's expression didn't change. Mr. Thompson, do you have any evidence to present? I thought about the screenshots on my phone, the pattern I'd started to see, Sarah's discoveries. None of it was admissible. None of it would matter without proper legal channels. No, Your Honor, just my word. Then I'm afraid. The courtroom door burst open. Sarah's younger brother, Alex, rushed in with a laptop. I'm sorry, Your Honor, but there's something you need to see. The bailiff moved to intercept him, but Alex was already plugging his laptop into the court's display system. This is from their home security system, from 3 years ago. My ex-wife shot to her feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, but the video was already playing. It showed Emma, maybe 13 years old, cowering in a corner while my friend stood over her, his hand raised. The audio was muffled, but his words were clear. Your real father didn't want you. I'm all you've got, so you better start showing some respect. The courtroom erupted. My ex-wife's lawyers objected loudly about illegally obtained evidence. The judge called for order, but I was watching Emma, who had started crying silently in her wheelchair. There's more, Alex said, his young voice shaking but determined. 3 years of videos. Every time Mrs. Thompson went on business trips, my friend lunged for the laptop, but the bailiff restrained him. His mask had finally slipped, revealing the rage underneath. That ungrateful little— Enough! The judge's gavel came down hard. Clear the courtroom. Everyone except the parties directly involved and the minor child. As people filed out, I caught sight of my ex-wife's face. For the first time in 10 years, she looked genuinely shocked. Whether it was from seeing the abuse or seeing it exposed, I couldn't tell. When the courtroom was clear, the judge addressed Emma directly. Young lady, I need to speak with you in my chambers. Alone. Emma nodded, wheeling herself toward the judge's door. As she passed my table, her hand brushed mine. A brief touch, but it carried 10 years of longing. We waited in tense silence. My ex-wife sat rigidly, staring at the table. My friend was handcuffed to his chair now, his earlier bravado gone. I kept replaying that video in my mind, wishing I'd fought harder, stayed closer, been there to protect her. 20 minutes later, Emma emerged with the judge. Her face was blotchy from crying, but her chin was raised with new determination. The judge resumed his seat. I've heard from Emma directly about her wishes and experiences. This court finds sufficient evidence of a pattern of abuse and manipulation that requires immediate intervention, he continued, outlining emergency custody modifications, ordering investigations, mandating supervised visitation schedules. The words washed over me in a blur. All I could focus on was Emma, who was looking at me with eyes that seemed to say she was sorry for believing the lies. But the victory was hollow. As court officers led my friend away, and social workers discussed Emma's immediate placement, I realized the ugly truth. The system that had failed us once was now scrambling to fix a decade of damage. Emma would need therapy, time, and space to heal. Our relationship couldn't just resume where it had left off. Mr. Thompson, the judge addressed me directly. While this court recognizes the injustice you've suffered, your recent actions show a troubling pattern. You'll need to complete court-mandated counseling and maintain stable housing and employment before any unsupervised visitation can be considered. I nodded, understanding. I'd become so focused on reaching Emma that I'd lost sight of what she'd need from me: stability, patience, and the strength to let her heal at her own pace. As we prepared to leave, Emma wheeled herself over to me one last time. I kept one, she whispered. One of your letters, hidden in my jewelry box. I read it sometimes when I wondered if you were real. Before I could respond, a social worker gently guided her away. She would be staying with a foster family temporarily while the investigation continued. It wasn't the reunion I dreamed of, but it was a beginning. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy had intensified. Reporters shouted questions about the abuse allegations, the illegal surveillance footage, and the custody battle. I pushed through them to my car, needing space to process everything. Sarah and Alex were waiting by my vehicle. We're sorry, Sarah said. We know we could get in trouble for hacking their system, but you saved her, I interrupted. That's all that matters. Alex looked younger than his 16 years, the weight of what he'd done settling on his shoulders. There's more footage, worse stuff. The police will find it all now. I thought about my friend, sitting in a cell, his carefully constructed image finally shattered, and my ex-wife, forced to confront the monster she'd invited into their home while pushing me away. The irony was bitter. She'd been so convinced I was dangerous that she'd missed the real threat sleeping beside her. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was the social worker. Emma wants you to know she's safe. She also said to tell you she remembers you singing "You Are My Sunshine" when she was scared. She'd like to hear it again someday. I sat in my car in that courthouse parking lot, finally allowing myself to cry. Not from sadness, but from a mixture of relief, regret, and hope. The road ahead would be long and difficult. I needed to rebuild my life from nothing, prove myself worthy of being in Emma's life again. But for the first time in 10 years, I had something I'd almost given up on, a chance. The sun was setting as I drove away from the courthouse. I had nowhere to sleep, no job to return to, and no clear plan for tomorrow. But I had truth on my side now, and a daughter who knew I'd never stopped loving her. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined during all those lonely years, but it was a beginning. And beginnings, I was learning, were messy, imperfect things that required more courage than endings ever did.